everybody, welcome back. If you tuned to my other video about how to get everything set up using Anaconda so we can run PyCharm and Jupyter Notebook, then you're going to be phenomenal. If you already know how to run Python on your computer, then let's just go ahead and dive into it. A lot of times when you're looking for beginner projects, one of the ones that's going to come up is a simple dice roller. And what I really love about coding is that there's no specific one way to do it. I'd like to run through things in 3 levels of complexity: a simple, a harder, and then a very complex version that actually uses a graphical user interface. The 2 main modules that we're going to be using in this are random and the tkinter, which is what we use to build the graphical user interfaces. If it's too difficult, you don't have to dive into that part. I would really love to see what it is that you come up with. If you have another way of doing something, or if you even have a better way of doing something, go ahead and throw it down in the comments and we can visit it in another video. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into Jupyter Notebook so that we can test things out. As I said in the intro, the main module that we're going to be using for this one is the random module. Random actually has a collection of other modules. To make things really simple, there's one within it called randint, meaning random integer. So we will do from random import randint. Go ahead and run that. No errors. So let's do the absolute simplest one to get it going, and we'll just say that dice face equals 6, and then we will print randint, and then you have to do the range that it goes, so from 1 to the dice face, and then we'll run that, and there you have it. So it's rolling a single 6-sided die. Super quick, super easy. And as you can see, you can run it with different faces, but it's too simple. If you look, all you can ever do with this one is roll a single die. Even if you set it to larger values, such as 120-sided, you can only ever roll 1 die. So if we were going to punch this up to a harder version so that we could roll a specified number of dice with a specified number of faces, then we're going to have to use some looping, we're going to have to do some number iteration. So let's go ahead and see if we can jump into the harder version of it. So for the harder version, and we're just going to do this in another cell, we can use the from random import randint. So that's going to be good. What we will do is we'll set up different variables here. Let's say the number of the dice, we'll roll 6 dice. And dice face, so that'll be the maximum number. We'll say 12-sided dice. So then we have to set a few values here. We'll say the dice value, because after you roll all the dice, you're going to have to add them all up. And so this is the variable that we're going to collect those into. And then so that we can see all the dice that were rolled, the actual value, we're going to create an empty list that we will append everything into. Now, if you notice in the other one, it would just run the function once and you get the amount of the die. For this one, we're going to use a while loop. So while numDice is greater than 0, n, just a random variable, equals randint 1, and then the dice face. So this is setting 1 as the minimum value that you can get, because you can't roll anything less than a 1 on the die, and then dice face will be whatever we set up here. So then we will say number dice, because we've just rolled it once, we need to decrement it, meaning take it down. So numDice minus equals 1. Then we need to get the actual value of this die that we rolled and add it into the dice value. So it'll be dice value plus equals 1. No, not 1, n. So n will be whatever random int is getting out of this, and it's going to add it on the dice value. When it first starts out at 0, say you roll a 3, then it'll add 3 into it. On the next one when it rolls, if you get a 5, then it'll add 5 to it. 3 plus 5 is 8, so on and so forth. Then we will take the value list, append the roll to it, so we can get that out. And then, just to finish it off and make it look nice, we'll have a print statement saying you rolled, and we'll have the value list print out, which equals, and then the dice value. So if we were to roll 6 12-sided dice, it says we rolled 7, 7, 7, 11, 11, and 2, which equals 45. There you have it. There's a harder version of the dice roller. Instead of just sticking with the harder version, of course we have to punch it up to a more complex version using graphical user interfaces, which is something that I really love doing. For that, we're actually going to have to go over into PyCharm. Now, something that I always do is I create a header created by Carlos, 5 July 2020, program with a GUI graphical user interface that rolls a number of dice according to user input. Now, we could go ahead and copy what we had in Jupyter Notebook over, which is what I did when I was prototyping this in the first place. But just to make things simple so we aren't copying things over and going through and deleting, which is something that you're going to get a lot of practice with later on when you're developing your own code, we're just going to run through what I came up with. Just so you have an idea of what we're going to be working towards, here's the function right here. It's going to say work factors dice roller. It's going to say dice, and I just set it to a maximum of 4 because with the width of the field right here, it won't show any more than 4 values. That could of course be changed. You could extend the text box so you'd be able to show more. This is more just a proof of concept. I don't have a lot of error checking in it, which is something that we can get to in a later video. Just let me know if that's something that you're interested in. Then you're going to have the max face value. You hit roll dice, it's going to roll it. It says you rolled a 3, total is 3 because it was only 1 die. If we were to use the example of 4, and then say 12-sided dice, roll dice, we rolled a 2, 6, 8, 10. Oh, that's crazy. I got a 26. Clear, of course, sets these back to the defaults, clears everything else. And if you notice, roll dice is always going to clear these as well, so you'll always get nice empty fields to work with, just to make things easier. So now that you see what we're working towards, let's go ahead and get into it. So the most important thing, every time you're working with the graphical user interface, you're going to have to import tkinter. So from tkinter, import everything. Import tkinter.ttk as ttk is a nice shorthand. And of course, we're going to need the random module. Random import randint. So let's go ahead and set our initial variables. Let's see, root is going to equal tk. Root.title, we'll call this work factors, dice roller. We won't worry about a geometry right now, we're just going to have everything fit itself in there. If we were to try to extend it out so we have room for the text boxes, then we could do that, but that's a more advanced concept. We'll get to that. So now our function. Well, functions, we're going to need 2 of them, because if you notice, we had the one that rolls the dice and then the one that clears everything. So let's do define roll dice, and then because I use lambdas to pass things using the buttons, I'm just going to add a method here that isn't actually going to be called. You'll notice that this is the num dice that we had from the Jupyter Notebook. This is the dice space, and we have the dice value. Oops. Dice value, that's going to be 0. The val list is going to be an empty list. Now, the reason that I left these blank here is because they're going to have to go and get the values from the text fields that we're going to set later on. And the fields themselves are going to store the values as strings. So the most important thing that we have to do is we have to change that into an integer using the integer function. So we'll say int, and then from the dice text field, get, this 1.0 means from the end, grab everything up to that. And then we're going to do the same thing for the dice face, but that one's going to be face text.get 1.0. Let's see if I move that out of the way. And we're going to use the same while loop. Num dice is greater than 0, n equals rand int 1 dice phase, num dice decrement, so minus equals 1 dice val plus equals n val list append n. Now, just to make sure that we have clean fields to work with, we're going to clear out the rolled text. Delete. And let's go ahead and copy this one. I'll have to keep typing it. The value text. Delete. Got an extra set of parentheses there. So now we'll do roll text.insert, and we'll put in the value list that we got before. Remember, from the function, it's going to show the list of all the dice that were rolled. So we'll get that list and we'll add it into here. Then we'll get the value text. We will insert the dice value. Okay. Now let's go ahead and create our clear method. This is what's going to set everything back to the default. Again, clear method where we can send a lambda that isn't going to do anything. Dice text delete. And we'll do dice text insert. That'll be end. And then we'll set a default of 1. And then we can do a focus set. What this will do is after you hit the button, the cursor will automatically jump into this box. Just something to make things easier for the user. Now that we've got the dice text taken care of, let's clear out the face text. Delete. And we need to insert a default. So let's go ahead and do a 6-sided die. That's pretty common. And then we'll clear the other fields. Roll text, delete, value text, delete. Okay, that takes care of all of our functions. Now we're going to go ahead and create our widgets. So we have our input, and have our dice label, which is going to be TTK, label, root. For the text, let's have it say dice max of 4. That way people don't set it too high. And now, when you're programming these, you can actually put the formatting for it, the grid, on the same row. So we'll say row equals 0, column equals 0, and then you can set the sticky of where it's going to be. But the problem with that is having everything on one line means that if you have an error in any little bit of it, it's going to say the whole line is wrong. So just to increase the readability of it, we're going to separate it out like this. So we have a dice label saying dice max of 4, which is what we have right here. It's going to be at 0, 0. One of the most important things in tkinter and for Python in general is that it always starts at 0. So for the rows, you have 0, 1, 2, 3, and then the columns are going to be 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So that means this dice one being on row 0, column 0 goes here. This next one, the max face value, is going to be row 1, column 0, so on and so forth. When I'm going through and I'm concepting, I'll draw out a picture of what I want the interface to look like, and then along the side I'll write in the numbers that I know where the different labels and different aspects of it are going to go. So if we have the dice label, that means we need to have the text to go with it. Do width 4, height equals 1. Text grid 0, column 1, sticky west. So for the stickies, you can actually do them north, south, east, west, which would be top, bottom, right, left, respectively. You can also combine them together, so you can do north, east, and southwest just by putting the letters together in the same way. So if we put in our root main loop function to get everything going, we can actually take a look at what we have so far. Let's go ahead and run this. Run the wrong one. So we'll run scratch 1. So keep that one there. See, so we have our window. It can be resized, that can be disabled. But we have dice, max of 4, and our text. As you can see, you can type in it. So we're off to a good start. So we've got the label, we've got the text. So now that we have the text itself, just to make sure that things look pretty, let's go ahead and insert go ahead and insert our default values. Insert and dot insert. And just like in the clear, we'll set it as 1. And then we'll also do focus set, just so the user automatically has the cursor there. Now we'll do the same thing with the face label and the face text. So we can actually copy these. So dice here is going to change to face. FA. Okay, so we need to change the text of it. So we'll have this say max space value. We need to make sure that we're changing the row and the column that it's on. So we'll set it to row 1, and then the columns can stay the same because it's basically the same thing but down a row. And then we'll set a different default, so 6-sided die right here. Alright, so let's take a look at that. Okay, we've got our dice, we've got our max space value. Those are coming along. So now we need to start creating our output. So let's create a rolled label. That'll be ttk label. We'll attach it to root, text, you rolled. Then we need our dot grid so that we can place it. And we'll put that on row 2, column 0, and we'll have it stick to the west. Now that we have the label, we need the text to go with it, and so we'll do rolled text. Root. To be able to get it so that we can display 4 dice, we actually need to set the width here to 8. I'll do the height as 1. Grid. So we'll have this on row 2, column 1. And just to give us a little more room, we're actually going to have it span 2 columns. That's what this means. Span is in go across, so column span 2. Sticky west. So since we have those, and just to make things easier, again we're going to copy. We're going to paste. But let's call these value label and value text. Value. And value. So then we need to change the row. So we'll do 3. So let's take a look at that. Oops, it still says you rolled. So let's have it say dice total. Alright, so we've got those. Now the most important part, we need the buttons to go with it. So let's have our roll and clear buttons. So let's have a roll button, TTK button, attach it to root, text, roll dice. Now, the most important thing here is the command function. That's what's going to make it so when we hit the button, it'll call the command that we wrote earlier. So it's going to be command, and then we're going to use something called a lambda, which allows us to call a function within the button and then pass it a little bit of information. In this case, it's a method that isn't doing anything. It's a little complicated to explain why we need it, but just from a lot of the experimenting and playing around that I've done, I found out that this works. And one of the most important things that I've come across is a lot of times if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we're just going to go ahead and go with it. Let's set this row 0, column 4, and then let's have it sticky east. So since we have our roll button, now we need our clear button. So we'll call it clear button, clear button. Just have it say clear. It's going to go to the clear function, of course. And we can have this say roll, or we can just have it say clear. Because it isn't actually doing anything, it doesn't matter, but I think it just looks thematically appropriate. So we're going to put it in row 1, column 4, sticky east. Let's go ahead and run that. And there we have it. If we hit roll dice, we roll 1 6-sided die, so we got a 5, and of course the total is 5. But if we were to go ahead and roll 2 6-sided dice, we rolled a 3 and a 2, which is 5. Roll it again, 4 and 4 is 8. We can of course roll 4 of them. We get 6, 4, 3, 4, which is 17. We can roll bigger dice. 6, 4, 10, 4 is 24. Clear is going to clear those and give us back our defaults. So there you have it. From start to finish, we had a simple, we had a harder, and then we had a more complex that took what we prototyped before and then built a graphical user interface around it.